Good evening. I am calling the Wednesday, May 25th, 2022 Code Review Task Force meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. Roll call of members: Andrew Nusma, present. Eric Cameron, absent. Tim Hull. Here. Donna Jensen.
Here.
Godin is absent. Nancy Nicetune.
Here.
Steve Roush.
Here.
Joshua Walls is absent. Shelley Ward.
Here.
Sarah Albrecht is absent, and Michael O'Brien is absent. Members of the public may attend in person or participate online at zoom.us/join. Meeting ID 969-0834-7417. Once you log into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell the moderator if you wish to speak to an item. More information is available in the agenda packet and on the city's website. Now on to the agenda. Item 1 is the adoption of the agenda. First item, does city clerk or staff have changes to the agenda?
Nothing for staff.
Any task force members have changes to the agenda? May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion
Okay.
to adopt.
And the second?
Second.
Right. Motion by Donna and seconded by Tim to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay and raise your hand. The motion carries. Item 2 of the agenda is approval of minutes of the April 27th meeting. Does staff have any changes to the minutes?
Nothing from staff.
Do any task force members have changes? May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
The motion was moved by Shelley, seconded by Donna to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is review of outstanding items. City staff, are there any updates or outstanding items?
If the two final approval items are approved by this body tonight, then they will go to the first one to the June 7th council meeting and the second one to the June 21st meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other outstanding items? All right. Number 4 would be, item 4 of the agenda is questions and comments from the task force and public. There was no homework for this meeting and no questions or comments were submitted, so we move on. Item 5, the final review and approval of Title III, Chapters 2 through 19. Item 5 is final review and approval of Title III, Chapters 2 through 19. The final version of these chapters were included in the meeting packet. Do city attorneys or staff have any comments? Okay.
Nothing to add.
Do any task force members have further comments? Nancy?
I'm just noticing it says, task force meeting changes have been added and highlighted in yellow, but there are no yellow highlights, at least in chapters 2 through 19. Am I just missing it, or?
Nope, but that should be for the other. That
Oh,
should be
yeah.
through 20 through 22. So
There
that,
was no additional.
So the changes are in yellow and they don't exist, so there were no changes.
not for 2 through 19, there were changes in 20 through 22.
Okay.
They were highlighted yellow.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding changes. Changes from
From the last time we met and
the,
discussed it,
okay, because I know we
where we gave
had
specific
input
work
and
items.
okay, all right.
If I, just for a point of clarification, I believe we only had a very small section left of that 2 through 19 to finish at last month's meeting. And at last month's meeting, there were no other changes to add since the last time we saw
After
this.
that.
And that's where we try to make those be in yellow so you can see that the discussion you had at the last minute is reflected in yellow at this meeting, and in this meeting's packet. And correct, there was no changes on those chapters.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the final version of Title III, Chapter 2 through 19? All right, and a second? Moved by Steve and seconded by Donna to approve Title III, Chapters 2 through 19 as presented tonight. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Those opposed, say nay and raise your hand. The motion carries. Item 6 is the final review and approval of Title III, Chapters 20 through 22. Item 6, this package was included in tonight's meeting packet. There are changes in yellow. I will briefly highlight a few. Some definitions have been removed from page 1, and scrolling through the packet, on page 5, there's been some clarification. This is on 3/2012, about disqualification and the city manager having the right of kind of exception. There are more changes on page 6 around the revocation and approval, the appeal process. Page 7 has a minor clarification to strike ADA and say accessible parking. And the next set of changes are definitional changes on page 13. Page 15 has a minor grammatical change. And then the appeals process is part of 3/2212 on page 17. Basically repeats the previously listed appeals process. And that is the list of changes that have been added by city staff since our last meeting in accordance with our instructions. Do city attorneys or staff have any comments?
No.
Do any task force members have further comments? Yes.
So I want to formally raise the question. So would it be appropriate, unless state law prohibits it, to control panhandling in this section? Specifically on the medians on roads. To limit it to, let's say, the outside of the road and not be on the medians between lanes.
So can I call something into question first?
Yeah.
This section specifically refers to peddlers, solicitors, transient merchants, which apply that someone is coming through a license process with the city,
Correct.
I believe. So I'll just ask in general, is there another part of code that handles panhandlers specifically? Or would this be the section of code?
My understanding is that panhandlers do not fall under the definition of a peddler, solicitor, or that type of,
Okay.
they do not fall under that.
Is there any code that you're aware of that enumerates laws relevant to panhandlers?
Chair, I think the laws that would be relevant would be just possibly disorderly conduct or other laws related to traffic. If someone was interfering with the lawful flow of traffic,
Okay.
then that might be a criminal issue, but sort of on the civil side of the code here, we don't have anything. I think there's some First Amendment issues that you would get into if you were to try to prohibit panhandling.
Specifically, the right to assemble, as you gather.
Well, I'm saying they don't have the right to assemble on the median on a highway that's 3 feet wide with bidirectional traffic. They have the right to assemble on the outside of the lanes, but not in the median.
What's wrong with the median?
Well, I'm specifically talking about Nicollet and Highway 13. And they're usually on that 3-foot piece of concrete between the lanes. And you got a lot of traffic and a lot of cars turning, and I think it's very distractive and dangerous. So if they're on the outside of the lanes, if they're on the, let's say, Red Lion side or the Cub side, that's fine. But I'm saying on the medians.
Yeah, I'm aware of it on 42 and.
Right.
It's becoming very, very prevalent in the last, especially since the snow has melted this spring. It's
And the reason I raised it is under soliciting. They're soliciting money. Now sometimes they'll give you a flower. Okay.
Well,
If I might, I do have the email pulled up from the police chief as to somebody else had emailed in a question about panhandlers, and I have her response.
Okay.
She says here, we, the police department, have had other inquiries about the increasing number of panhandlers and I understand your concerns. There is no requirement for a license or permit related to panhandling. The state and federal courts have ruled that panhandling and other solicitations are constitutionally protected activities, and that the local government may not restrict the activity except in the most limited means necessary. And unfortunately, most cities that enact the regulations have had those regulations struck by the courts when challenged as being overly broad and unduly restrictive. Generally, unless the person acts in a threatening or coercive manner or significantly blocks or impedes traffic movement, their activity is constitutionally protected.
Yeah, that's why I was limiting it to the median.
And I think that unfortunately, I kind of side with you on that, that unfortunately, when they're on the median though, they're not directly, and you really shouldn't be distracted by something that's on the median, because if there was a sign there, it'd be the kind of the same thing. Obviously, when you're holding a sign and you're taking your eyes and you're reading it, it's a little bit different, but I guess that, with her reading of it, it sounds like it's a no-win situation, but I even go down that road.
Yeah, I would concur. I think the chief's summary of the state of the law is pretty succinct, and I don't think again, if there's issues in a particular context or a particular scenario where someone is impeding the flow of traffic, then the police department might be able to do something. But in terms of restricting it from the median, we're not going to be able to do that.
Can I ask you an additional question, tangent, albeit? Who is given the legal authority to set laws for certain, like Highway 42 is a county, so would the city have the jurisdiction to even set?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about, but I mean, it's within the community, but it is a county road as well. So an ordinance that would apply within the community would apply there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, with respect to prohibiting solicitation in that context, it's really not something that we can do.
Sure, makes sense. But just in general, I was curious if we even had grounds for jurisdiction.
Yeah,
given they're not.
if it's within the city limits of Burnsville, we have jurisdiction. Yeah.
Is that the same for the interstate as well?
Yeah, I mean, the interstate that's within the city limits,
Right.
there's also state patrol that also
Sure.
has the authority over the,
Sure.
yeah.
But you can't ride your bicycle on the interstate, right?
No, I think you have to
No.
be a vehicle
Or
for
you
you.
could
That's
panhandle.
I don't think you can. I've seen specifically that the Department of
You
Transportation
know, you
has.
know what I'm saying?
You can on the
Yeah.
entrance ramp,
Yeah.
entrance and exit
Yeah.
on the side, which is,
Where people are apart and,
I
Yeah.
used to work
Right.
near the Capitol in St. Paul, and most of the entrances and exits had lots of people
Mhm.
and
Okay.
tents and all
Right.
sorts of things. So.
Asked and answered.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I had a nice young fellow who wanted to sell me something, windows or siding or something, and of course he did not have his name and blah, 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 which I kind of don't really care about so much, but we have these things. It's like, do we have all this code about what you can do door to door and pedal and if really for not? Or is it just there in case there's someone who's really a nuisance or outside of the bounds, and then you have something to go on? I guess, is all of this necessary
well,
when it's rarely followed, it seems?
Rarely enforced.
Right. And I'm not going to call up the city and say,
911, I have a
this
solicitor.
person was here and they didn't have a name tag, and, it was like 8 o'clock at night, and
We do have people call.
you could,
Especially
yeah.
if the people, if they feel like the service they're providing is maybe fraudulent or something like that.
Is that a call to the police department or to City Hall? Okay,
But we also get the calls
Sure.
sometimes.
And again, as we heard last time, there are companies that do register under this ordinance. So although some people maybe they're not aware of the ordinance, but there are definitely solicitors that are registered.
I share the same observation, but because I've had several solicitors, and it made me think of our most recent conversation, and none of them had licensed with the city, or they said their boss did, but they didn't have the credentials, so they wouldn't qualify. And I think that this framework exists when it does become a nuisance, but that's kind of in the eye of the beholder. So we have the right as citizens or residents to call 911 and complain if you feel so inclined, and if the city can staff that, I guess they will. But I think that it's important that the law exists, because otherwise there is not a recourse against persistent, obnoxious
Yeah.
soliciting. Other questions, comments? All right. May I have a motion to approve the final version of Title III, Chapters 20 through 22?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second? Moved by Tim, seconded by Shelley, to approve Title III, Chapters 20 through Chapters 20 through 22, as presented. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed, say nay and raise your hand. The motion carries. That takes us to pretty much the conclusion of our business. Item 7 is miscellaneous items. The next code review task force meeting will be June 29th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. here in the City Council chambers. Meetings will typically be held on the last Wednesday night of each month in 2022. Our homework is to review Title III, Chapter 23, Tobacco and Tobacco Products, which is included in tonight's packet. Task force comments are needed to be submitted by Wednesday, June 15th. And as a reminder, we didn't have homework last time because the city is kind of working one section ahead of us and has gone through and already provided comments, which thank you very much for doing that.
And hope that helps.
It does.
Sure.
Yep, I believe it will. That concludes our formal business. If there are no additional items, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being with us.
You got it.